Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week, before I continue on and talk about the film that I will be discussing this week, I'm planning on, if I cannot get a guest on to record an episode for this show, I am just going to record an episode by myself talking about a film or something. I know that's not always the most enjoyable thing, listening to just me talking for 30 minutes or however long the episode ends up being. But I like to get an episode out once a week if I can, on preferably Mondays. But I'm not going to stick to a specific schedule. I will try and get it out on a weekday. So between Monday and Friday, I will try and get an episode out. I will get it out on Monday if I can. If I don't have something recorded for Monday, then I'll just get it out sometime during the week. So there might be some more episodes in the future of just me talking about films. It's not my preferred. I would love to have someone else on this talking about it, but I'm just working with what I've been given, and I hope you still enjoy. And I just think that is a good just sort of explanation of you know and I've got a couple of really, really good episodes planned in over the next few weeks. Hopefully, I can get. I'm hoping I'm currently in discussion and contact with someone with a big guest. I guess sort of in terms of podcasts, a big guest. That I don't know when that episode is happening. I was hoping that we could record it this month in July, but it doesn't always work out. But at some point in the near future, hopefully we'll get this person on. But that is in the future. That is not relevant to this week. So I will be talking about a film that I watched about a week ago. The anime film. I was gonna say Japanese anime, but I think all anime is Japanese. The anime film Grave of the Fireflies, another obscure film, and I'm gonna try and keep this spoiler free. When I get to a point where I'm going to talk about spoilers, I will give you a warning and then just skip ahead a couple minutes or so, and hopefully I will tell you to just when I get to the spoilers, I'll give you like a big warning in case you haven't seen it and you would like to, so you can just skip ahead a little, and then you can skip to my rating rather at the end. So this film, what is it about? For those who don't know, the film is it is an anime film about sorry, I believe it is World War II that the story takes place in. To the Second World War. I've got some notes. I've got some notes next to me that I'm just reading. So it takes place during the Second World War, and it follows two characters, a brother and a sister, Saito and Setsuko, and they are orphaned during the war. And so the film is basically an exploration of these two children, essentially, living in this time and trying to survive World War II. And it also is a comment on the Japanese culture in certain ways and how it deals with people who are homeless or people who are in suffering and pain. And it's a very, very well made film. To sort of give you my history on anime as a genre. Well, it's not a genre, a medium, I guess you could say. It is a medium. I'm very a big proponent of. I get annoyed when people say that animation is a genre when it isn't, because it isn't a genre. It is a medium. And when there's board games, or you see these things that are like, oh, animation is my favorite genre or whatever. And it's like, well, it's not a genre though. It is a medium through which to tell a story, and that's sort of you know, and plenty of people sort of like this. If you listen to the Incredibles audio commentary, there's like a Brad Bird has like a tirade about people who call animation a genre instead of a medium. I haven't listened to it, but I've heard it from people who have heard it. I know it's very funny. Um, but anyway, it's sort of my history of anime. I knew of anime films. I knew of Studio Ghibli's work, or Ghibli, whatever, however you pronounce it. Stuff like Spirited Away and House Moving Castle. And anime is something that I'm not particularly interested in. Not that they're not because something about the animation style and just sort of what the premise is for a lot of those kinds of films put me off slightly. I feel like I don't have a problem with a film being, happy and go lucky, and sort of having a sense of wonder. But I feel like I will watch them in the future, and I think I talked about this briefly in an episode in the past. Maybe I'm not sure if I did. Maybe it was after. Anyway, that's not the point. I've never seen any anime film until this film, Grave of the Fireflies, which very affected me emotionally. It's like I'm always a big. I'm always someone who appreciate like I don't. I don't know how to. I'm going to try and put this in words as best I can. Um, I'm not always like very rarely am I truly emotionally affected by a film. Like I'll be happy and I'll feel if it's a good film I can I'll be happy or I'll be sad or be angry or be whatever. But very rarely do I get to a point of just like emptiness and just like pure sadness is the prime thing. Like very few films can reduce me to tears or get me close to it. And watching this film, it just truly it truly got to me. And I think like I think this film works and gets to that point because it's kids. I don't think this film works as well if it isn't kids as the protagonists. Because I think the film it needs the protagonist to be kids because I don't think there's as much emotional in my perspective anyway, there isn't as much emotional resonance or like it wouldn't be as emotional and get to people as much if it wasn't kids as the main characters. And there are people who I'm sure can relate to losing a parent at a young age and not truly understanding how it works, and that is what the opening of this film is. The film opens on bombing because it takes place during World War II, and so there's like bombings and there's people getting into the raids and a quick spoiler, so to skip ahead like 20 seconds or so. Basically, the main character's town is gone. Like they escape, they run, they hide under a raid shelter. And they look back, and that town is decimated. There is nothing left. There's just burnt wood and fire, and that is like a truly emotionally affecting. And then there's of course their mother, who is who's really badly injured. Like she is, her entire body is essentially burnt. Like every bit of her is burnt, and it is disturbing to watch. And so yeah, after that, then the film is well, actually before that, the opening scene of the film. Again, brief spoilers, so just skip ahead a little bit. Is so it's like in a train station, and you've got these two like cleaners, janitors, and they're cleaning up the train station. And there's a bunch of like homeless kids there who are all dead or dying. And just the way that they are treated and the reaction that they give is so like effed up that like this was a part of culture and hell it still exists in culture today, the reaction and what is what you know happens to, and the respect or lack thereof that is given to homeless people who are dying on the street, but people don't pay them any mind because they're homeless people, and then they don't matter. Like that is truly dark. Like that is truly like just that is truly just a terrible thing that exists. And I believe, I don't know how accurate this is, and feel free to correct me, contact me, email, contact me or message us on Facebook if this was an intention of the director to comment on Japanese culture and the reaction that it has towards the homeless. Like I don't know because I'm not Japanese and I've never been to Japan, and I don't and how they could their culture could have changed. But then I'm pretty sure if I read something, I was reading something, I don't know if I read it correctly, that in this time the homeless were treated as less than human. And in fact, it takes place because it's a flash forward, and then the rest of the film is a flashback. And I didn't grasp that the first time I watched it. So one of the kids we see there is, one of the kids that we see there is like the main kid, basically. And I didn't catch that the first. I didn't catch that when I watched it, but because I think it in hindsight it is incredibly obvious, and I feel stupid that I missed that. But I think I missed it because I was so focused on what I was witnessing in this film, the reaction that these characters are given by these people, that I just sort of didn't take it in, especially. And I think that was just it. And so then, after that, we see, the raid and this kid. And I will say that the animation, I don't know if all anime is like this because this is from the late 80s, but it feels very choppy. Like it just doesn't feel as like it just didn't feel quite right. That might just be me, and that might just be sort of how anime is in general. And I don't know, but it yeah, it's really um yeah, it's a bit of an interesting animation style, but that is anime as a whole. And so I'm just going to sort of talk about some other parts in the film, and as well as people's interpretations and analyses and themes and stuff that they have sort of gathered from the film. So yeah, the film is primarily with those two main kids, Saito and Setsuko. And so they spend some time with this woman, this horrible woman who is awful to them, and then they leave, and then they make their own home. But they can't survive because they're just two kids, and it gets really emotional and really sad. And like that, I will talk about more individual stuff in a minute, but it it's because this is a film that is very like you could very easily interpret it as being anti-war, and that's pretty. Oh, sorry, and that's like a pretty accurate opinion to glean from it, that it is anti-war because the film doesn't try to glamorize it, and it doesn't show like these soldiers in battle, doing cool things, shooting people and stuff. That no, it's not doing that. The film is really only like the film is showing the struggles that people are dealing with, and the bad things that are happening to people because of the bad stuff that happens because of war, and how and just sort of how it goes, and you know problems that you know just occurs from war. However, the director of the film has repeatedly denied that he denied that it is an anti-war film. He sort of talks about what he believes it is, and he said here, and I'm just reading a quote here from him. It is not at all an anti-war anime and contains absolutely no such message. He instead had intended to convey an image of the brother and sister living a fair life due to isolation from society and invoke sympathy, particularly in people in their teens and 20s. And so he also talked about another film, Barefoot Gen, which I've also heard is another anti-war film, but that's sort of a similar anime war film. And so the director was an anti-war advocate, and he he basically has talked about how like it the country hasn't changed exactly, sort of how it sort of still sends children off to war and does these things. And he makes a he is anti-war, but that's not the message he was trying to convey in the film. The film is also a it is an adaptation of a short story, an autobiographical short story, which I haven't read, and I don't know how accurate it is to the original short story because I haven't read it, of course. But it is an adaptation of that, and I think and the fact of the matter is, like, things that I know happen actually happen for real. Like that gets me more at times. Like the fact that knowing that this actually happened to someone. Like I haven't seen 127 hours, but I have to assume that when I eventually watch it, I'll be like even more, not grossed and sort of more like icky about it because that is like based off a real person, you know. The stuff that takes place, something stuff that's about real people that gets me more than like stuff that isn't real because it's like I know this stuff happened, and yeah, it's just I will go as far to say this is probably my favorite animated film I've ever seen, and like I've seen a lot of animated films because I love animated films because they're great. They are because they are the most. I would argue that they can be the most interesting forms of film making because there's so much you can do with animation that you cannot do in live action. Like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, for example, as an animated film, you can't do as a live action film with the create. I mean, you could do with the creativity, but with the movements and the various different like just stuff that's in that film, you couldn't do as well if it was in live action. And this film, they did a live action adaptation of this film, which I don't really know much about. I assume it's probably the same film, but just live action. And I'm just quickly looking it up now to see how it was received. So it seems like it was received relatively well. Like nothing, like it's not like it's sort of like at a middling score, so it'd be in the middle ratings wise. Um, yeah, this film just really, I really don't know what to say. Like, I would like to do a read, like, I'd like to do this episode, talk about this one again with someone else who's seen it, because there's so much more discussion I can get from this than I am now. And I just think that, like, it's just, it's kind of a bit hard to talk about, honestly, because, like, such a dark, depressing film that is truly It's true, like you feel it, like the emotion and like the characters in the story, you feel it. It's truly fantastic. Yeah. I've still got some. I will talk about a few more things. This is probably going to get a little more spoilery, and this will probably be most of the rest of this episode. So skip to like towards near the end where I give my rating and everything, because I'm just going to talk about spoilers for the next 10 minutes or so, maybe. So the film, yeah, it's so these two Japanese kids, and they are living their lives. You know, they live with this one woman who takes them in after their mother passes, and so they are basically just living out of the kind. They're just living with these people out of the kindness of their hearts. And one problem I did have, kind of, was the mother. So they after them they live with this woman and her partner and her kid, and she is getting very irrationally angry with them, and I don't know if I truly think it's massively justified. Like I think that it comes a bit out of nowhere, and it's not that it's bad. Wait, it's not bad per se. It's more just it feels like that it comes out of nowhere, and it really feels like it's just this is here to sort of carry the story along, really, and just to create conflict and to have these things happen so that we can progress the story. And so we spent a good, like, 20, 30 minutes or so, maybe, give or take, with this woman and her family. She just treats these kids absolutely appallingly. And so then the kids leave and they find an old, like, raid shelter, and they basically make a home in there. They put up, like, a mosquito net so they can, sleep in there and not be stung by mosquitoes. They make a swing. They collect all this food and everything. And it's truly just, and you almost forget how bleak and dark this film is when you just watch these two kids living in a home together, just living life, having fun, making their own food, having fun with the fireflies, and it's and everything seems all good. Then the well, so throughout the film, through various scenes, the boy, the older of the two, is sending fathers. Wow, God, I do that all the time. He's sending letters to his father to sort of give him updates, like telling him that his mom is injured and that she's died, and then he's not responding. And as I was watching this, I was like, his dad's not getting those letters. His dad's probably died. Like that's why his and I was watching this and I'm like, his dad isn't responding to these letters because he's dead. He is passed, and that is because just and that just is terrible. Just that watching, you watch these, this kid who he's sending letters and letters to his dad, awaiting an answer that he's not getting and that he will never get, and it is not revealed to us that his dad is dead until like towards the end of the film. But it's truly because the nothing, like, we don't know anything. it's not confirmed until like right towards the end of the film that his dad is dead, that they've lost, and that because towards the end of the film it is revealed to the boy that the Japanese lost the war, that the war is over, that the Americans or Americans slash British are coming to take them and to you know take control of the country because they won the war and they're going to be taking it all. And also throughout the film, there's several scenes of them with of the kids with fireflies, and I was wondering why it is called Grave of the Fireflies. And there is a scene where they've got all these fireflies, and then the next day they're all dead, so they bury them. The grave of the fireflies. But it is because it is also called this the something that I've found here that I'm just reading off of is so called because people considered that lights hovering near lakes and rivers to be the souls of the Heike family. All those members perished in a famous historic naval engagement, the Battle of Dan no Ura. Also, and the film it makes parallel. It parallels between the Fireflies or what Setsuku and Saito are. That these because there's a dialogue scene about halfway through the film or so where she's asking Setsuko is asking Saito why the Fireflies have to die so early and why they have to die so early and why they and it's just I'm sorry so that I'm pausing every now and because I'm just thinking about it and it's just really just getting a little bit it's hard to talk about. So the film it's basically using the fireflies as a metaphor. It's using the fireflies as a metaphor for these kids because spoiler alert again, the kids unfortunately die. These and the parallels between the fireflies and these kids are innocent. They deserve to live a long life, and the girl believes that these fireflies should live a long life, that they shouldn't die this soon, but that is the unfortunate reality that we live in, that these two kids are going to die earlier than they should because of the world and because of war and because of everything that comes from this. And it's just very, very well handled. And I was heartbroken. I didn't it it made sense as an ending for these two kids to be dead, for them to die. But like you don't want that to happen. It's never nice to see kids hurt or in pain or dying because it's not enjoyable. I mentioned this in my episode on spring, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. When a scene early on in the film where that kid is crying, I don't like that because it makes me uncomfortable and makes me feel just bad that I can't help this kid who is upset. Like it just gets me that and that is something that can that gets me a lot in films. Is just bad things happening to kids. it's never enjoyable to watch, and it's just not nice to see, honestly. Um, so yeah, that's the end of this. Actually, no, this is not the end. Sorry, I've actually got a couple more points I'd like to um talk about really quickly. So there's a bit in the film where they've got uh their kid, the two kids have got this like canister of like fruit, like hard fruit lollies, and so they're having one at a time, saving them, keeping them up, and then we get towards the end of the film where the little girl is dying and she's got what you think are the final like few hard lollies in her mouth, but it turns out it's marbles because she's dying of malnutrition, and it is very uh, it's very emotional just watching this little girl barely have the strength to do anything, to eat, to talk, to sit up, to move, to do anything. Really, it really gets to me. And this film is just really, really good. It is just really, really great. And for that reason, I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. So, that is this week's episode, Grave of the Fireflies. Hope you enjoyed. This will probably be one of my more depressing episodes on this show. So go back and listen to some old ones where we have a lot more fun, where it's not just me talking about really sad things. So, where I feel really weird plugging this show. I've mentioned it enough in previous episodes, and I will mention it next week. If just you should be able to find us, just search for us on Facebook and Instagram. Check me out on Letterboxd. Website. This is really nice. The website is up. It is launched. Hopefully it works. If it is not launched, I'm still working on it. Not everything is as nice as I like it to be. However, the website should be launched. So hopefully, if you search for it, in fact, let me just quickly find the. If you just search at the movies williamfletcher.com, you should hopefully be able to find it. And so what you will find on this Facebook page will be the About section, which is just what the show is about, contact information, benefits of the podcast, reviews slash blogs, which will basically just be reviews I will post on there, as well as my personal 100 favorite films. That can give you some hits, that will hopefully give you some hints as to future episodes of the podcast, as well as giving you a sort of explanation into sort of a look into my taste of films. And yes, that is all for this week's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, I will hopefully see you all next week.